Hey there and welcome to Matt's Garage. Today I'm going to be changing the front CV axles in my 2011 Hyundai Santa Fe. So if you own a 2007 to 2012 Santa Fe or equivalent Kia Sorento, this video should help you out a lot to change your own CV axles. I'll walk you through the process step by step. Okay, now symptoms that your CV axle is going bad is one of them is a vibration under acceleration and deceleration. So you'll really notice it going up hills. That's often one of the first signs. Or going around speed corners. You'll really notice it then. That's normally how you tell it from a bad wheel bearing. One other symptom you may experience as it progresses and kind of wears out is when you're changing direction. Especially you'll hear a clicking noise, an audible clicking noise. That's taking up the slack in the joint and the lack of grease in there. And also you can get micro cracking or splits in your boot. If your boot squeezes in really easily and doesn't feel like it's holding any air pressure, like they should be somewhat sealed. So all those are symptoms of bad CV axles. So the first step's going to be jacking up the vehicle and removing the wheels. It's 21mm on the lug nuts there. And you want to jack up your vehicle. So just behind the wheel here, you'll come under, and on what they call the pinch weld, you'll see these little divots. So just jack right here in between those two divots there, basically just to mark that reinforced area where it's safe to jack. Now for a little extra security, you can just slide your removed wheel underneath the vehicle. I also have a set of blocks under there, same as having a jack stand. I like to do just one side at a time when I'm replacing the axles, because on this side it doesn't matter, it won't leak anything out of the transmission. But on the other side of the vehicle, on the left side, the axle plugs straight into the transmission and seals in there. So you want to have the vehicle tilted to one side so that you don't lose any transmission fluid. So if you just do it one side at a time, you automatically end up with that tilt when you jack up to one side. We're going to remove the axle nut. Now you can remove the center cap from the wheel and do it with the wheel on the ground. You could have somebody in the vehicle holding the brakes. You can of course use an impact if you have one. Or another option for you is you can put a 1/4 inch extension. Will fit right into those vent holes around your rotor, and then you can jam it against your brake caliper mounting bracket and easily break it loose that way. So I'll be going with the impact option, and since I just put new wheel bearings on not long ago, this should all come apart easily. So I'll just get in there and bend the cotter pin with a pair of needle nose, bend that all straight. And then what works good if you're using needle nose, you can get the tip right in there and then hammer on it. So it's 32mm on the axle nut here, and we're just going to put a little lubricant on there first. And there's a large washer in behind there. So they do give you a new nut, they don't give you a new washer. Make sure you replace the washer back onto the new axle. Okay, so that axle is free in there. Sometimes they do stick on the spline, but that one is free. So again, I'll just put some 3-in-1 on these strut fasteners here. So these bolts on the strut here are 17mm on the bolt end, and they're actually 19mm on the nut end. Gonna need an extension to get at the lower one because of the brake hose. And then normally just a swift hit with a hammer knocks them out of there. Okay, now we can just put our pry bar in there. Now we're gonna push the axle back as we pull this ahead. Just mind your brake hose, but like I thought, this whole thing will kind of flop back. Oh, your ABS sensor too. You want to get that out of there. Right now I'm putting pressure on mine, so it's 10mm. There we go, 10mm, and then you just work the sensor up out of there, hook it up there out of the way, then it won't get broken. So what I'm actually going to do is just go into the vehicle and turn it hard to the right, and that should swing this whole thing, and it should pull some slack in my brake hose ideally too. Okay, there we go. We got a ton of slack here, and I think we got enough to get this out of here. There we go. So that is the way to go. You can see my brake hose is nice and slack. Okay guys, well, here is the other end of that axle, and there's this heat shield with 2 fasteners on it. What are those, 12s they look like to me? Yeah, 12, so I'll get those out with this little ratcheting wrench. Okay, there is that heat shield out of there. Okay guys, so there is an internal snap ring inside here. I already tried to bust this apart with a long pry bar. That wasn't working, so I'm actually going to try driving it apart with a hammer. There we have it finally, and you can see there was a lot of rust in those splines, so we'll be applying some grease in the new splines before we assemble it to prevent that problem in the future. Okay, well, as far as I'm concerned, that's the hard part over with. You can see how cracked that boot was, but that wasn't the only problem. These axles were clicking and vibrating, and you can see I have my replacement axle ready to go in here. But before we get that end on there, of course, this is clean in here, but that spline in there is quite rusty. So I'm just going to get under there with a little wire brush and clean all around it, and then I'll get some grease on there. Just a little grease on my finger, and especially around that snap ring we want to make sure. There we go. It just clips in like that. Just make sure it's locked on the snap ring and you're good to go. It's so easy to do. I can do it while holding the camera in one hand. Yeah, it was probably a little shaky, but I got her done. Okay, these fasteners, you always want to put them through with the bolt head on the front, and that just keeps debris from hitting the threads and marking them up. Oh, and we're going to have to straighten up our steering. Remember, we turned our steering to gain clearance to remove the axle. Okay, I'm just going to put the axle nut on just to hold that axle, because it's being a bit of a pain. Okay guys, well, I'm seeing the problem is my sway bar end link is kind of pushing my strut out of position. That's why I can't get things to line up. Now the reason why it's doing this is because I have just the one side jacked up, so it's putting pressure on this sway bar. So my solution is actually going to be to jack up the other side, and that'll take the pressure off this and allow me to put the strut back in. Okay, I've leveled it outside to side here, and we'll just try again. So that's the thing, don't fight with anything. Everything should kind of drop together, and if it doesn't, it means you're doing something wrong. There we go. Give that a little tap. Get our ABS sensor. Make sure it's nice and clean. Wipe that off on your shirt. Shove that back in there. Just use a nut driver to snug it up. Don't have to go crazy on it. Okay, and now before I forget, I'm just going to go back under and put this shield back on with the two 12mm bolts on it. Just going to wipe it off first, a little greasy. Okay, now on 2008 and newer Santa Fe's, it calls for 188 foot-pound torque spec on this axle nut, which is 255 Newton meters. If you happen to be working on a 2007 model, the torque spec's only 170 foot-pounds and 230 Newton meters. So with that in mind, we're going to torque this up to 188 foot-pounds, and that'll set the correct preload on the bearing. So I will go ahead and just put a 1/4 inch extension in one of my vents here. You can even use a screwdriver. I'll use this little pry bar because these are just rusted up. The extension should fit in there, but it's not. You want to just bring it slowly up to torque. There we go. Now we're going to put the cotter pin in. And they provide a shiny new cotter pin with the new axle. So just get that in there. You want to put the long side. It has a long side and a short side. Long side goes up. I'll show you that in a minute. And if you can't get it to go in, you want to go tighter. So I got to go a bit tighter. You never want to back it off to get it to line up. There we go. So the long side, you want to bend the long side up over the top like this. And what I like to do is I'll just smack it with a hammer. So that makes it nice and tight. Smack it down the other side. And then what I will do is I'll take a pry bar, normally a bit smaller one, but I'll go like this. And fold that right down the side of the nut. And that's the proper way to install a cotter pin. A lot of people fold them to the sides, but that's not proper. So there we go. We'll just remove our pry bar. And there's a close-up of that cotter pin installation. So now we're ready to put the wheel back on. Just make sure your hub and your wheel mounting flange is nice and clean. I like to put a drop of lubricant on all the threads, so I'm going to do that, and then we'll just torque the wheel up to 80 foot-pounds. Okay, 80 foot-pounds. And I like to check it again after a quick test drive. Here we are over on the left side, and it's pretty well the same deal. You just want to have the steering all the way to the left so that you have a slack brake hose still, and then you can work your end of your axle right out easily. And this is actually the easy side. You just got to pop it out of the transmission here. So we're just going to get in there with the pry bar, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing, and hopefully it'll pop right out. Sometimes those snap rings can be a little sticky, and if you're having a lot of trouble, just try spinning it 180 degrees and trying on the other side, because sometimes that matters where you hit them. If you get them on the wrong side, they can sometimes grab better and kind of go in there deeper. So there we go. I just wanted to show how much of an angle I have it on, and nothing leaked out. Okay, well, it looks like there's plenty of grease up in there already, so we'll just put this straight in. One thing I'll mention is these axles are bare metal, so if you're concerned about them getting rusty, you might want to hit them with a little black spray paint or something. I normally would, but I'm in a hurry today. So you just want to get that worked back in there without getting any dirt on the splines, and then spin it to line up the splines. Once they're lined up, you can just give it some good force. You want to get directly on it and give it good force. You can use the axle kind of like a slide hammer, the outer part of it. There. That seated in there. I really had the hammer on the end of the axle, put all my weight into it. Okay, and again to show how easily this goes in. There. Okay guys, well there we have it. The Santa Fe is back down on the ground with the new axles installed. So I do hope you found the video helpful and informative. Thanks a lot for watching Matt's Garage. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have yourself a great day.